started working at a company, what is it? Appliance retail company at their corporate office. And I was very, very timid. And like you said, I gained a little bit of confidence when I started working with the executives. They would put me on the spot all the time and ask me questions in front of a lot of, older men in suits and things. And I'm this little girl, I'm 19. And after a while, it just died. So I got that feeling again when I watched the recording. And yeah, I want that.
Good. I'm happy that I could inspire you because the world is
Yes.
full of opportunities. Hi, Nicole. And unfortunately, we're definitely going through a moral crisis in our society. I don't think that there's anybody who would say that there is not a problem with morality in our society.
Mhm.
Clearly there is. There's a problem with morality in the world. Look at Israel. You
Oh
know,
my gosh. Yeah.
I was so thrilled and inspired because before I logged on to this live session, I checked the news and there's a ceasefire. There's going to be no more war between Israel and the Palestinians, at least for a while. And that, I don't know if you all have really been following the Arab-Israeli conflict, but it's been going on. I mean, I don't want to say, I mean, almost 1,000 years. And I'll just give you a little bit of the history about it because, the Arab-Israeli conflict is what's in the news today. And basically what happened is because there was so much discrimination against Jews in Europe, they decided they were going
Mhm.
to have to flee Europe. So Israel was a British colony, the same way America was a British colony. And
Mhm.
the Brits said, Jews, if you want to leave Europe, you can come to Israel. Well, there were already some people living on that piece of land, and they were the Palestinians. So now, to me, you would think that as logical adults, that the the Israeli Jews and the Palestinians would just say, we can share the land. You can have this part. I'll
No.
have that part. But is that what happened here between the English settlers and the Native Americans? No, the Native Americans and the English settlers, fought and battled and got slaughtered, and the Native Americans got pushed onto these tribes and reservations. So something similar happened over there as well. And the Israelis just started wanting all more and more of the land. They wanted everything. And they don't want to, and as it is today, the Israeli Jews want everything. They don't want to give the Palestinians anything. They don't want to give them the right to vote, the right to own property. They just say
Wow.
if you're not an Israeli Jew, you get nothing. And
Wow.
obviously, this is a class about global ethics, so I'm sure you can think of a few problems with that view. That's not really going to lead to any kind of respect for human rights.
Mhm.
Palestinians barely have, a decent source of water, while the Israeli Jews are just living it up, and some of them are enjoying great wealth. And the problem with that is that Israel is an ally of America, and we've been giving them money for 50 years. So you and I and Nicole are indirectly and tacitly supporting Israel's oppression of the Palestinians because they take American tax dollars and they use that to fund their war against the Palestinians who they deny human rights to. So that's the part that bothers me, is that I don't want my tax dollars going to fund wars in the Middle East.
I agree. That is horrible.
So what do you think about that, Nicole and Charisse? What do you think about the Arab-Israeli dispute?
I actually had this discussion with my boyfriend the other day because we saw an article on what was going on, and he's paramilitary. He's got a lot of experience in that area. He's been out there, um, and he kind of I didn't know exactly what the history was, and so we went online and we were like, okay, let's go in there and see exactly what happened. And that's when I started learning that, like where the Jews were first, the Palestinians where they were first, and what happened as far as the Jews leaving to Europe and then coming back, and everything that was going on. And it looks like the U.S. is really supporting Israel because we had a relationship with the British before all this happened anyway, and so we have this commitment to them. And like basically right now, this is my thing. I think that's why we're supporting them because we've already had this commitment with them before this happened. you know. So I don't know. I just think, in my like personal opinion, I think it's really messed up what's going on. I'm not a huge fan of Israel. Just from what I know, you know, even though I'm an American and I was in the military and everything, it doesn't mean that I have to say, hey, Israel's great and everything. I don't agree with some of the things that they're doing. And yeah, so that's my stance on it, you know.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Kant's deontological ethics. And Kantian ethics is about following universal moral laws, like, thou shalt not kill.
Mhm.
That Kant recognizes an inherent value in human life. And the Israeli Jews are not affording any sort of human rights to the Palestinians. And if you look at the history of how the Jews were treated during World War II, you think they would realize that it's wrong to deny human rights, because European Jews were denied human rights during World War I and II, which led to the Holocaust. And you would think that history would have taught a lesson to everybody that, okay, in this point in time, we understand that we all need to get along, right? And we all need to respect human rights. And the fact that the Israeli Jews are not doing that is outrageous. In America, we should not be supporting Israel when they are denying human rights to the Palestinians. That's not what we're supposed to stand for. So I agree with you. I mean, I actually went to a college with a few people from Israel, and they refuse to talk about the conflict because it's so deep, and it's painful. They'd be like, I won't even talk about it. And I'm like, oh, okay, I just take you as a person. You're from Israel. I know you don't want to talk about the Arab-Israeli conflict. And I mean, obviously, there's great people in Israel. But as far as their government stance on it, it's very troubling, because it is a moral dilemma when you have people who are denied human rights. And here's the conflict also. We'll get to this in week 5, because one of our topics for week 5 is terrorism and torture. The Palestinians came out after 9/11 and said that the reason that they flew planes into the World Trade Center was to punish America for supporting Israel, because Israel is oppressing the Arabs, they're oppressing the Palestinians, and they wouldn't be able to do it without our continued financial support. So that's why we were punished on 9/11. And of course, I was punished, but I don't support Israel, but that's how the Palestinians view us as Americans. We all support Israel. Israel oppresses them. So we're going to get back in America through acts of terror. So this Arab-Israeli conflict, definitely, it is a threat to human life, and it is a threat to America as long as we continue to be involved in this Arab-Israeli conflict. What do you think, Charisse?
I think it's dangerous. It's scary because, as you mentioned, we were all punished on 9/11. We don't know if a similar reoccurrence will take place. And the other part is, on the other side, the whole human rights violation. I feel like I don't know if it's possible legally for it to happen again, but I feel as though if it's happening there, some other groups or countries and so on might just decide, let's do that too. I think it's very scary on both ends.
Yes, good point. And one other historical fact that I was looking at yesterday, reviewing the history of it, is back in 1993 when Bill Clinton was president. In many ways, that was a period of what they call détente. Détente is a loosening of tensions between governments. And during the 90s, it was a period of détente. Part of it is the wall fell between East and West Germany. Our relationships with China were, getting better. Our relationships with the Soviet Union our tensionings were lessening during the 90s. And, there were real efforts between our governments unifying the governments of Israel and then the Palestinian government, to achieve peace, and there were peace treaties and signed. So 1993, we were actually on the almost about to have complete peace between the Israeli Jews and the Palestinians. And both of their leaders won Nobel Prizes for peace, because they signed a peace treaty where Israel, for the first time, recognized the Palestinian government, decided to say we're going to, allocate certain pieces of property to the Palestinians, certain pieces of property to the Israelis. We're all going to respect our boundaries. They're going to get property. We're going to get land. And then the Israelis went and then just killed their leader. So that's kind of what's happened every time one of the Israeli leaders decides, let's have peace over here. Then the Israelis just go ahead and, or maybe the extremist group go, over there, just kills that leader, and then there goes the whole peace plan. And that's again the brutality of the Israeli Jews and their leadership. Their refusal to recognize the Palestinian government is amazing. It is a global ethical dilemma that affects everybody, and I know everyone's getting pretty tired of it. I know I am.
You know, I I'm not sure if this is like I don't know if you've heard of the Geneva Conventions, right?
Yes.
So like my big thing is I've seen some things where like some like the UN and some other organizations are actually saying that Israel has broken one of the codes of the Geneva Convention, and so that bothers me a lot because I mean when you're in a nation like ours or Israel or like in all these developed nations, these are developed nations that are saying, hey, these are standards, these are regulations, this is like international, all the countries that are part of this are supposed to abide by that, and it's just crazy to me that Israel may be breaking some of that and we're still supporting that. And we should
Yes,
know better. As a country, we should know better,
absolutely. Yeah, in Module 5, we will talk about the Geneva Conventions. And just to provide a little background, Cherise, after the atrocities of World War II, everybody realized we don't ever want to have this happen again. So the United Nations was created. Um, there were several treaties, peace treaties. There was, creation of oversight, NATO and the UN, to have some kind of oversight over international diplomacy and ethics, because the whole idea was to never have the atrocities that occurred during World War II, to never have any of that happen again. And so the Geneva Convention set up a group of rules about the ethical treatment of prisoners of war and other ethical, rules that we're supposed to follow. And, and the fact that Israel has broken some of those international treaties, it is definitely, again, it's a serious moral dilemma. And I hope that our government will encourage the ceasefire to continue. And I think our government needs to make it clear that we're not going to continue to fund Israel's holy wars if they're not going to at least try to show that they're respecting the Palestinians and their human rights, their right to work, their right to vote, their right to own land. Some of that needs to be respected before the United States continues to just give my tax dollars to Israel.
I agree. I agree. I think we should take a stand in that way. I agree.
Yeah, it's definitely a dilemma. So, we have a new administration, so we'll see what this new administration's approach is to Israel. And historically, very few U.S. senators have been willing to say that we need to change our approach to Israel. So we'll see if our politicians decide that it's time to change our foreign policy in the Middle East, because it's not working. But
We'll see.
I'm just very thankful, Cherise and Nicole, for the ceasefire that
Mhm.
started today, and let's hope that lasts for at least a year.
fingers crossed. Yes.
So let's get started with our ethical theories. This week we'll be talking about Kantian ethics and Jeremy Bentham's utilitarianism. We have a quote from each. Immanuel Kant, it was an Enlightenment thinker living during the Enlightenment period of the 18th century. His view was that there's only one categorical imperative, and that's one thing that you must do, and that we must act according to that maxim or that rule, by which you can at the same time will that it be a universal moral law. So right there, he's talking about, global ethics, that the way we have to act in some way that it can be a universal moral law. And along with Kantian ethics, there's a rule of reversal, which says anything that we do is only moral if that same thing is done to us and it's moral. That means if we drop a bomb on Japan, then that's only moral if it's okay for them to drop a bomb on us. And Charisse, do you think it's okay for Japan to drop a bomb on us?
Of course not.
Yeah, according to Kant, then it's not moral for us to drop a bomb on them either. That's the rule of reversal, and that's believing in the categorical imperative, that ethics is about moral laws that are universal and that apply in all situations. What do you think Kant would say, Charisse, about relativism? That was discussed in that module 1 video, the idea of relativism, cultural relativism, moral relativism, saying that everything's relative. Do you think that Kant would like that?
I don't think so, since from what I remember from that lesson, you have different, and correct me if I'm wrong, forms of relativism, such as I remember the cultural, because I'm from a different country. So that what might be right for me might not be right for someone else that's from a different region. And so he might not agree with um, my idea of what's okay, because it wouldn't be, well,
No,
unless
you're
I
right.
would be okay with someone else doing the same thing. So I think he's more of a everyone should be okay with should have the same morals and rules, versus, well, it's okay because you come from somewhere else. Does that make
You're
sense?
exactly right. Yes, that is perfect. Yeah, Kant does not support anything being relative. He believes in absolutism, that morality is a set of rules. Thou shalt not kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't commit adultery, don't murder. You follow those rules. And they're universal moral laws with no exception. And that's how we can all, live in an ethical world. Now let's compare that to consequentialism. Consequentialism says, let's weigh the pros and cons here. And the morally correct action is the one that leads to the greater good. So that's getting into Jeremy Bentham's philosophy, which is utilitarianism. I posted a video explaining utilitarianism in the module 2 material. So utilitarianism says that the morally correct action has the consequence, it has an outcome of reducing suffering. I mean, that would mean that if a mother is poor, then it would be okay for her to go to Walmart and steal baby formula, because when she gets home and feeds the baby, that reduces suffering. That would justify that act, because it's not the rightness or wrongness of the act that Bentham is looking at. It's whether it reduces suffering, right? It's like steal from the rich, give to the poor. That's okay according to utilitarianism, because the goal of utilitarianism is to reduce suffering and to maximize pleasure, maximize profits, maximize happiness. So for Jeremy Bentham, we got this quote that for him, the issue is not can they reason or can someone talk, but if they can suffer, then they're entitled to moral consideration. Any living entity who can suffer is entitled to moral consideration. So, Nicole, do you think that Jeremy Bentham would support animal rights?
Yes.
Yeah, they
Yes.
can suffer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you watch those 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 commercials, oh, they're just terrible, and they come on every day, you know. The SPCA, that's what I was trying to think of, the SPCA. I mean, those commercials have been coming on my entire life. And I mean, how does it make you feel when you see the animals being hurt and abused? I mean, you know, a lot of people give a lot of money to support the ethical treatment of animals, you know, because according to Jeremy Bentham, any entity that can experience suffering is entitled to moral consideration, and that includes animals.
Yes.
This is a side issue, but you know, here in Nevada is very hot, and with global warming, it only gets hotter. Um, the record high here in Nevada is 117. I'm going to tell you something. When it is 117, it is hotter than anything you can even imagine. It is very hot. So there was one day when it was very, very, very hot outside, and I was going to the drugstore to get something, like my Walgreens, and this woman had her dog in the car while waiting while she went into the Walgreens' shop. And of course, I don't get involved in other people's problems because that in and of itself is a moral question, whether your duty of intervention or non-intervention. I usually do not intervene in stuff that doesn't affect me. But let me tell you, another customer did, and she went up to this woman and said, "What are you doing? You're leaving your dog in the car on a day when it's 115 degrees with the windows rolled up." And you know, they've got into it. I just stayed out of it. But what do you think about a situation like that? Or sadly, people have left babies in the car when it was 100 degrees in
I would
Texas.
I would have been that other person. I would definitely say something. I don't keep my mouth shut when, I mean, it's a living, breathing thing that can't speak for itself, you know?
Good.
And there's just too many stories out there, animals dying left in their cars, being hot. 117 is absolutely way too hot to leave them in there. Everybody that has a brain knows that it gets hotter in a vehicle than it does when you're standing outside because all that heat is just radiating in there. It's collecting in the vehicle. There's no fresh air. Um,
Mhm.
I probably, and if she wouldn't remove the animal, I don't know, I probably would have broken the window.
I was just gonna say, you see those people on the court shows where they break the window, so now they're being sued, and their defense is a living thing was in there cooking, basically. And most of the times they do win. Um, it depends on the judge. I guess some judges go by the utilitarianism, and then some are I guess that would be absolutism. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure
Kant,
where
you
they're
could say
saying
Kantian.
I would
right where you broke the law.
It's
So
actually legal. In a few states in here in the United States, it's legal to break the window of a vehicle if it is too hot. And you just got to figure out what state you're in and if it's allowed. But there are states here where it is legal and you can break the door, not the door, but the window, if it is
mhm,
reasonably too hot for the animal to be in there. It's been done already, and in some states, people have, yeah, sure, they get sued, but you know what? That's something that I'm willing to bite, and if you want to sue me, sue me. Like
mhm.
to me, it's not morally right. It's a living, breathing thing. Like I said, it can't speak for itself. You're causing suffering, unnecessary
Yeah,
suffering. Like it boggles my mind that people are that ignorant and don't take these things into account. I don't know.
I agree.
Excellent points. And you both have an excellent understanding of the moral theories. Utilitarianism says the morally correct action reduces suffering, period. Break that window, Nicole. That's
Yes,
good.
ma'am.
That's good. And thank you for pointing out that that is the law in some states. And in that situation, Kant believes in following written laws. So if that law is written, Kantian ethics would also say follow the laws that are written, because those are universal laws that apply to everybody as well. Once a law has been written, Kant would support following that law. So good, good. You both have a great understanding of moral theory. So just a reminder, we talked about this last week. A moral theory is an explanation of what makes an action right or what makes a person or thing good. Theories concerned with the rightness or wrongness of actions are moral theories. A moral theory is connected with judgments and principles. There are two types of moral theories, consequentialism and non-consequentialism, and we just covered that. A consequentialist theory says that what makes the action right is its consequences. You break the window, you get the dog out of the car, it gets some fresh air, and it lives. The other type of morality is that non-consequentialist theory, which is typically Kantian ethics, which says that the rightness of the action does not depend on the consequences. You're just simply looking at the act itself, like saying murder is simply wrong because it takes a human life. That would be, non-consequentialist theory. Let's talk about the other types of consequentialist theories, Charisse and Nicole. So there are several consequentialist theories depending on who benefits from the goods. And the Module 2 discussion forum is about ethical egoism. Ethical egoism is simply choosing the action that produces the most favorable balance of good over evil for you. And can you give me an example of ethical egoism? Maybe something that you saw in the Module 2 discussion forum. What would be an example of a time where you had to do what was in your own best interest and forget about what everybody else wanted, what would help other people, and you simply had to pick the morally correct action that produced the most favorable balance of good over evil for yourself? What's an example of that, Nicole?
I'm still trying to think of a moment when I had to do that.
Do you remember, Charisse, because there were some that talked about in that discussion forum?
I've never had one because the more I listen now, I realize that my contribution was probably not exactly right, but I would say a scenario that I've known of is where a wife, uh, her husband was involved in drug trafficking or dealing, something to do with drugs, and she was somewhat involved, and so they both were arrested, and they have children. And in order to be out of jail to take care of her children, she told the whole story. So I feel as though she chose the to do the right thing so that she would benefit, she and her children would benefit from that. Does that fit the
That is a
question?
textbook example, Charisse, and it's the perfect example.
Okay.
Yes, anytime two defendants are charged with a crime, one defendant chooses to cooperate with the police and get a favorable deal, that means they'll be out quick and back home with their kids. That's ethical egoism. And it seems morally correct. And I even think that that could be justified by utilitarianism, because if you look at the best interests of everyone involved, including the children, it's better for the mother to tell on the father, and then, she can be exonerated, and then she's back home with her kids. That's the most favorable outcome for the entire family. So yes, that's a perfect example of consequentialism at work and looking at the consequences to make the best decision. And ethical egoism. She did what was best for her and her kids, and seems like a good decision to me.
I think that was really a great example.
It
I
is.
definitely understood it much better in that context.
Thank you, Cerise. It was an awesome example. So let's talk about get away from the criminal world and think about how this plays out in the business world. more and more, especially during the pandemic, I get the feeling that businesses are charging more and more money for services, for grocery delivery, for food. Somebody posted something on social media where, like a rib roast was $80 in Ohio, I think. We have definitely experienced a lot of inflation over the last couple of years under the prior administration, and maybe that inflation will continue. But I do feel that businesses are taking advantage of the pandemic, right? They know that we're at home right now, or we've been in quarantine for the last year, and it was a perfect opportunity to, market all kind of delivery services to charge more money for toilet paper and hand sanitizers and cleaning wipes. That would be price gouging. And it's ethical egoism because it benefits the retailer, the seller, and the manufacturer. And during the pandemic, Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, was already a billionaire and now he's even richer. So I think that's an example of ethical egoism. And of course, delivering groceries and services and food and everything that Amazon does, it does serve society and it's very good. But it's also ethical egoism, right? Because he's making a lot of money off of that.
I
So,
um I
mhm.
agree with that. I think that really also it's a demand, like demand drives prices. So like the more that people are home and they're demanding these services, I mean the businesses are like, yeah, I have all these customers coming in, a lot more, it's doubling, tripling. They're gonna raise those prices up to get more, gain more revenue, and it's definitely, I think demand really has a huge part to do with it as well.
You're exactly right. That's the invisible law of supply and demand. It's called laissez-faire economics. Let me see if I can remember the Scottish philosopher who invented that. Adam Smith is the thinker who invented the notion of supply and demand. And he called it the invisible hand of supply and demand. Sure, when demand increases and resources are scarce, price is going to go up. And I don't know if you remember this, but right in the beginning of the pandemic, this man in Tennessee went to all the dollar stores and bought all of the hand sanitizer and just put it in his garage. And he tried to sell it on eBay and Amazon for these exorbitant prices. And they caught him price gouging and they just totally, shut down his account on Amazon and eBay. And eventually the police went and raided his house, and to see if he had all of the hand sanitizer and all of the hand wipes there. And I think he had like 5,000 items. And he was planning on selling that and getting rich. So he was obviously an ethical egoist.
I remember
And he
that
got
story.
busted.
I remember that story. Yeah, he's an opportunist.
Yes.
But
Good.
then,
Another.
but then they're doing it as well. you know, Walmart and Amazon, especially Walmart, they're no longer just charging you for the delivery. They're also charging you for 2 hour delivery with no choice of saying, I don't want the 2 hour delivery. So you're paying for delivery, 2 hour delivery, and also tip. And you don't mind tipping the person, but you're not really given a choice. So I get in my car and go.
Good for you. Yeah, they are. And it is, they're definitely taking advantage of the situation to benefit Walmart, not to benefit us. It is to benefit Walmart and its CEOs and its shareholders. Otherwise, they wouldn't mind passing on those increased revenues to employees by paying all of them $20 an hour. But what do we see in the news? Yesterday, two members of Congress went out and helped Walmart employees strike to get $15 an hour. That's ethical egoism again. They don't want to pay their employees. Keep all of the money for yourself. So there's a little bit of selfishness there. All right, let's keep going. Let's move on to Kantian ethics. So again, for Kant, he doesn't care about the consequence. For Kant, it's following the universal moral laws. The morally correct action is done in accordance with the categorical imperative. The categorical imperative is what we have to do in any given situation, regardless of wants, needs, or consequences. And an example of that would be don't lie, and don't steal, and don't kill. So, according to Kant, what should the mother do if she's at home and her baby is starving and she doesn't have any money? What should she do according to Kant? Should she go into Walmart and steal?
Nope, she should probably ask for a loan from a neighbor or apply for food stamps or something.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Yes.
plenty of resources out there, and I think the problem sometimes is that some people don't know where the resources are. They don't know how to connect with those resources. They're not as educated about them, and but there are resources out there. I think that I don't know, like I think in a situation where you have exhausted all of your resources and you still haven't gotten any food or any milk for a baby or whatever, then hey, if you gotta go steal it, if I had kids, I don't have any children, but if I've exhausted my resources and my baby's hungry and I have no other choice, then I'm gonna do what I have to do, um, and hope that I don't go to jail. Yeah. But I mean, it might not be ethically okay. It might not be right in other people's eyes, but you got to do what you got to do to survive. And I don't know. I think there's some people out there that really aren't as fortunate as some of us are. And so
Yes, and what you said, Nicole, is utilitarianism. It's the morally right action is the one that produces the most favorable balance as good over evil. The most evil thing would be allowing a human being to starve to death, right? That's evil. Stealing, well, that depends on the situation and the moral theory applied. Honestly, when I was 16 years old, I started working in retail. I worked for Macy's when I was a teenager. I worked for Sears. I worked at Kmart. I worked at JCPenney's. People do steal. Do you think those stores are prosecuting everybody that steals? No, they take the item and they leave. Is security going to risk their life and tackle every person that walks out with a pair of jeans or some baby formula or a backpack? No. Even if security does stop a shoplifter and they take them aside to talk to them, chances are, they might get some kind of civil theft charge. I mean, they would occasionally somebody gets arrested for shoplifting. It is very, very rare. The normal scenario is that the person walks out with the item. That's just what normally happens, and they don't get caught because of the inconveniences of trying to catch every shoplifter. So, if a mother's starving, she's got a decent chance of stealing something and getting away with it. That's just how things are set up. So, utilitarianism would definitely say that, the morally correct action produces the most favorable balance of good over evil. So, as you can see, Charisse and Nicole, the decision that you make is going to depend on which one of these moral theories you choose to apply. Again, for Kant, you're not allowed to steal because that's a universal moral rule. If everyone stole from everyone else, society would fail. It would be utter chaos. If people did not respect other people's property rights, it would be chaos. If everyone killed everyone else, that would destroy society. If everyone lied about everything, that would destroy society. So that's why those are universal moral laws, because we have to act in accordance with the categorical imperative, which is something you must do without any respect to needs or wants. So let's talk about how Kantian ethic plays out in self-defense, because Kant says you can't kill. So, Nicole, suppose a man comes to your house in the middle of the night with a gun, knocks on your door, and says, "Are your children home?" What do you do?
for one, I'm not gonna open that door, and he's gonna hear my shotgun getting loaded. So I'll probably pump my shotgun so he can hear it. He'll know that I'm armed as well, and we'll go from there, you know. But basically, like I can't go outside and shoot him because he's standing out there with a gun. Like if I'm in Florida, first of all, and if he wants to come in, if he's gonna like come into my home uninvited with a weapon, I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna just it's either me or him, and it's not gonna be me. That's it. That's just how I see it.
Good. Again, that's utilitarianism. Um, the morally correct action is the one that produces the most favorable balance of good over evil. So he's evil, he dies, he gets shot, you live. That's a favorable outcome because he never should have been at your house to begin with. And of course, you've got you've got those states. I know Colorado is one. Colorado is what a make my day state, which means, like if they're on your property, you can shoot them. But I know other places like Florida, they need to be in your house. I think Texas, they need to be like, on your doorstep or something, and then you can shoot them. So again, it depends on what state you're in, the extent to which you can act in self-defense and what the rules are. But
Um,
for uh-huh.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Here in Florida, we have the stand your ground as well. So you're actually able to act in self-defense outside of your home, but they have to demonstrate a reasonable, like you have to have a reasonable, justifiable fear that of your life. You know that they have to demonstrate that they're actually like gonna kill you. And that's through like grievous bodily harm, or if they have a gun or a knife, you can protect yourself in that situation. um but if they're not like armed, and you're not really getting into a physical altercation, you can't just pull your gun out and kill somebody because they're standing in front of you yelling at you. Like there has to be a very good like I don't know how to explain it, but
Oh,
you
you
have to be
explained
able
it
to,
perfectly.
yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up because the stand your ground law just is not in my head today. So that's a perfect example of a moral decision that you have to make. And it's unfortunate that sometimes doing the right thing morally could have legal consequences, because someone could still be charged for murder for standing their ground, get arrested, have to be in jail, hire a lawyer, and then the lawyer has to get up and argue your right to self-defense and right to stand your ground. So, it's one of those conflicts between law and ethics. It's also unlawful to discharge a firearm in almost every state in America. Do you think there's a conflict there?
With being able to discharge your firearm.
Yeah, the fact that there's a law against discharging or brandishing a weapon.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good law. Because here's the problem: we have a lot of people who own weapons, who own guns, and not all of them are very smart. And it doesn't mean that they're experts and that they're experienced and they know how to handle that weapon. And unfortunately, you have those people who are not um, who will end up shooting themselves or somebody else by mistake, having a negligent discharge. Um, and so you need laws in place like that, because for one, also if you're like in a residential area, you're gonna put other people in danger. If you're discharging your firearm, I can't go in my backyard right now, even though I have like a wood line back there. There's a road that cars drive on directly behind that wood line. I can't go out there and shoot into the woods, because there's traffic out there. Like my bullet is going to travel much further than that wood line, and it could potentially injure someone. I have neighbors, I have houses like 2 lots down from me, and it's dangerous. That those are some laws that are really, they have a good reason to be in place.
Excellent point. Thank you so much for your participation and really explaining, what's going on here, when it comes to the ethical use of a firearm and the problems, with people who are not trained on gun safety. Good example. Well, let's move on to our module 2 assignment. So this week you get to have fun. You have to create an ethics FAQ sheet, which is a frequently asked question sheet. It's called the course project paper because it's going to relate to an assignment in Module 5. So you're acting as if you're as a job fair, and you're trying to create an FAQ sheet for potential job applicants to help them understand ethics. So you have this list of questions that need to be answered. What are ethics? Why do ethics vary from person to person? What are the key features of consequentialist theory? So once you get down to number 2, you're going to need to cite to your textbook or some reliable authority, because I did not create consequentialist ethics. You didn't create utilitarianism or ethical egoism. So we need to cite the author of the idea. So if we're getting the information about these ethical theories from the textbook or some online journal or website, or if it's ethics.com, we need to cite to a reliable source. So that's why the APA format is required for this Module 2 assignments. And you need to answer all of those questions. So here's the grading rubric for the Module 2 assignment. The assignment is worth a total of 45 points. You get 5 points for answering that question, what are ethics? I think you could answer that in your own words, or you could get the definition from the textbook. The second question, you need to fully answer the questions, why do ethics vary from person to person? And I'm sure you could think of your own reason why they vary from person to person. And then number 3 is, what are the key features of consequentialist theory? So when you're talking about those key features and you're doing this assignment, it would certainly be helpful if you wrote in complete sentences. And I'm going to share with you a sample of a model FAQ sheet that another student wrote, if I can find it. So let me look on my computer here, and I want to share this this model assignment. There it is, model FAQ sheet. So it should be written in complete sentences with APA format. There's the running header, page numbers, standard title, student name. We are now Rasmussen University. This is the course number, course code, title of the course, and the instructor's name. And then you see the FAQ standard, the standard FAQ sheet has the question first and then the answer. And this person got their definition from Merriam-Webster. The definition of ethics is an area of study that deals with ideas about what is good and bad behavior. It is a branch of philosophy dealing with what is morally right or wrong. So this person has about a paragraph to answer that first question. Then she cites the textbook. The second question, why do ethics vary from person to person? Notice she answered this with her own thoughts and ideas and no citations. Many people's ethics differ from one another's due to upbringing, which should be one word, culture, and personal experiences. Again, there's a paragraph of writing there. The next question, she talks about consequentialist theories. She writes in complete sentences and she cites to the textbook. Same for the next question. She talks about different types of utilitarianism, which are discussed in your reading, act utilitarian versus rule utilitarianism, maximizing happiness. She describes ethical egoism and cites to the textbook as well. And then what are the differences between utilitarian and ethical egoism? So this person got an A on the assignment because they answered all of the questions, followed the APA format, included in-text citations, a title page, and a list of references. Any questions? Let me look in the chat. Is everyone okay with this assignment and understand what is expected? It should be
Yes,
interesting.
ma'am.
You're okay with it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, great. I noticed you said that, yes, ma'am, and that's that military training. My dad was in the Air Force for 20 years. He was in the Army for about 5 years, and he worked for the Navy as a civil servant for like 19 years. And I still say yes, ma'am, and yes, sir to people. I like that though.
All the time.
Yes,
I just
ma'am.
that's just how I address everyone, you know, I just keep that respect and I I don't know. Yeah, it's ingrained.
It is. And I still love being on base. I'd rather be on base almost than anywhere else. And it's probably just because I grew up on base and that's what I'm used to, the commissary, the BX. I'm used to that lifestyle. Everybody mostly follows the rules. I feel very safe when I'm on base. It's just, I don't know. I like being around military people. And fortunately, I've had a lot, thousands of military students in my teaching career. So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service to this nation. Okay. Um, so we have come to the end of this live session. With every live session, there is a live session question that needs to be answered so that you can get credit for this assignment. And this week, the question is, what is the categorical imperative? Submit your answer using the Module 2 live session question Dropbox by Sunday, May 23rd. So what is the categorical imperative? You can get that answer off the internet, or you can get it right from this discussion. The categorical imperative says act in accordance with universal moral laws without concern to wants or needs. Kant said there is only one categorical imperative, and that means one thing that you must do. Act according to that rule, by which you can at the same time will that it be a universal moral law. So that is the live session question for this week, and you just need to submit it using that live session Dropbox by Sunday, May 23rd. I've gotten a few questions from people. At Rasmussen College, typically a module will start on Monday. Rasmussen University, the module starts on Monday and the module ends on Sunday. So be sure to have your assignment submitted by Sunday. The discussion forum ends on Sunday, and I am not allowed to accept late discussion forum posts after that discussion ends because it's no longer a discussion once that discussion ends and a new discussion starts on Monday. So be sure to have your 2 posts in by Saturday or Sunday. Any questions, Charisse and Nicole?
Do we have only one written assignment this week?
Yes.
Good.
As far as I understand it, with this course, you will have one written assignment, one discussion forum, and one live session answer every week. Except for Module 6, there is no written assignment.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Even better. I'm going to enjoy this even more.
Oh, I'm glad. It's really a fun course and it gives you a chance to think and participate. And there's so much going on right now with ethics. I feel better just talking about it. So thank you so much, Charisse and Nicole, for attending the Module 2 live session. If you have any questions or concerns, my e-door is always open to you. I'm just an email or a text message away. So, feel free to call or email me with any questions or concerns.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good
Thank you,
evening.
Nicole. Bye, Nicole. Bye, Charisse. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye, Nicole.
Bye.